The galaxy lay silent, far too silent. 2 years had passed since Captain Elias Grant unleashed the Excalibur warhead into the core of the Erebus hive mind. 2 years since the unstoppable swarm had crumbled in an instant, their monstrous bodies fading into nothing. 2 years since the Alliance's last fragments drifted through the wreckage of a victory paid in blood and ruin. Yet the stillness rang hollow. High Captain Zorth stood upon the bridge of the Sovereign Wrath, staring into the endless black. The final battle had erupted in a realm beyond map space, where the Erebus had forged their power, where even the laws of physics had twisted and faltered. Now it was nothing but a void, a dead scar in the universe, an abyss where reality itself still bent in defiance of order. The war was done. And yet, why did it feel as though unseen eyes lingered? High Captain Zorth shifted his gaze. Second-in-command Warlord Threx stood rigid at his side, battle scars etched deep across his scaled hide, living reminders of the horrors they had narrowly endured. "What is it?" Zorth asked. Threx hesitated, his voice low. "Sensors are picking up an anomaly at the edge of the dead zone. It's unusual." Zorth's spines bristled. "Define unusual." Threx keyed the console, and a holographic display flickered into existence. "We deployed long-range probes into the Excalibur detonation zone last month. None of them ever returned." His claws tapped again, and the image sharpened. "But today, one did." Zorth's expression darkened as Threx magnified the probe's final transmission. Static washed across the display, fractured readings flashing in jagged bursts. Then, for the briefest instant, something emerged, a ripple in the void, a flicker of energy unlike anything cataloged before. The probe simply ceased to exist. No blast, no interference, just gone. Zorth's jaw tightened. "Play it again." Threx obeyed, but the outcome was unchanged. The disturbance lingered less than 3 seconds, something shifting in the dark. Impossible. The Erebus were gone, their core obliterated, weren't they? Zorth exhaled slowly, forcing his gaze from the display. "Any other incidents?" Threx hesitated. "Yes." Zorth's claws curled. "How many?" "A dozen. From the farthest edges of charted space. Vessels vanishing, sensors warping, whispers over comms." Zorth's blood ran cold. "Whispers?" Threx's nod was grim. "Voices, patterns in no known tongue. And some, distorted though they were, sounded human." Zorth turned sharply, his stomach knotting. "That's impossible, is it?" Threx's expression hardened. "We once thought the Erebus were impossible too." Silence pressed heavy between them as Zorth faced the abyss again. He had fought the swarm. He had watched them die. Yet now something else stirred. Something unseen, calling from the dark. The war was supposed to be over. Humanity had burned its own cradle to ashes to halt the Erebus. The last splinters of the Alliance had fled to the galaxy's edge, broken, but breathing. The Excalibur warhead had achieved the unthinkable. It had erased the enemy, and still something lingered. Something. High Captain Zorth paced the command deck of the Sovereign Wrath, his claws drumming against the metal floor. Reports from Threx gnawed at his thoughts, phantom whispers in dead channels, ships gone missing, anomalies festering at the rim of the Excalibur detonation zone. None of it made sense. The Erebus were gone. They had to be. "High Captain." A voice rang from the sensor pit. Zorth turned, spines rigid. "Report." The technician's fingers raced over the console. "We've intercepted another transmission. Weak, but it originates inside the dead zone." Zorth strode toward the display. The data was garbled, warped beyond clarity. But as the technician stripped away layers of distortion, something emerged, a voice, faint and broken, yet undeniable. "Help." Zorth's breath caught. The bridge froze. Threx's expression hardened. "Run it through analysis," Zorth ordered. If this is just residual noise from the war, I want confirmation. Filters swept across the signal. The voice sharpened. Zorth's stomach clenched. It was human. This is Captain Elias Grant. I repeat, I am still here. Silence smothered. The bridge. Zorth's claws curled into a fist, his voice a rasp. That's impossible. A trick. It had to be. Later in the war room, Zorth sat with his senior officers, the holographic projection of the signal flickering before them. He remembered Grant's final words, moments before the Excalibur warhead ignited. He had seen the sensor. Feeds as the blast devoured all. Grant was dead. He had to be. Could it be mimicry? Zorth muttered. Commander Sato, a grizzled human veteran, shook his head. I fought the Erebus for years. They never imitated us. They consumed. Bodies, ships, whole worlds, but never deception. They didn't need it. Threx folded his arms. Then what is this? Sato's gaze flicked down, hesitation in his tone. I ran the voice print against every database we have. It's an exact match, no deviations, no flaws, it's him. Zorth's spines bristled. Impossible. The Excalibur warhead didn't just kill him, it erased him. That sector doesn't exist anymore. Sato's eyes stayed firm. And yet, the signal comes from there. A heavy silence settled. Zorth's jaw tightened. He didn't believe in ghosts, but the Erebus had proven the universe birthed horrors beyond reason. If this was a trap, they had to uncover it. And if Elias Grant still lived, then they had left something unfinished in the dark. Zorth exhaled, decision hardening as his decisions made. Zorth growled. We're going back. The sovereign wrath slid through the void like a silent predator, its scarred hull cutting across the wreckage of the Erebus war zone. It did not travel alone. 30 ships trailed in its wake, the last ragged shards of the once mighty galactic alliance. Human destroyers, Royan dreadnoughts, Tar recon craft, and a handful of battered independents that had survived by sheer fortune. They had all endured the horrors. And still, they returned to the place where everything had ended. Hi. Captain Zorth stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the view screen. The coordinates drew closer, the heart of the Excalibur detonation, or what remained of it. The void was wrong. Even through reinforced viewports, space appeared fractured, unnatural. This was no battlefield, it was emptier, hollower, as if something had gnawed at reality itself. Hi, Captain. Threx called from his station. We're crossing the threshold. Zorth let out a slow breath. Status. Threx's claws flicked across the console. Sensors are unreliable. Some readings register complete emptiness. Others, he hesitated, voice tight. Others suggest space itself is shifting. Around us, Zorth's frown deepened. And the signal? Commander Sato leaned forward over his station, eyes narrowed. His instruments glowed steady, unchanged. Whoever, or whatever, was transmitting, it was waiting. Send a probe ahead. Zorth ordered. Full scans before we take another step. A drone detached from the fleet, thrusters burning as it streaked into the anomaly. For a moment, its data fed back clean until the stream fractured. The feed flickered, symbols twisting into garbled nonsense before it was overwritten by something else. A voice. A whisper drowned in static. I told you, I'm still here. Zorth's blood froze. Elias Grant, waiting for them in the dark. The Sovereign Wrath's bridge fell into a suffocating silence. The probe's signal had collapsed, leaving only static, but the voice clung to the comms, clear and undeniable. Calm. Controlled. The same tone Grant had used in every battle before Earth. Was lost. Impossible. Grant was dead. Zorth's claws flexed behind his back. Instinct howled this was a trap, something beyond their comprehension. And yet, if there was any chance Grant lived, they had to know. Threx, Zorth said, forcing his voice steady. Can you pinpoint the source? Threx's crest lowered. Not precisely. The signal shifts, bleeding across multiple points in space. But its strength is greatest at the detonation core. Of course it was. Zorth turned to Sato. You knew Grant better than any of us. What's your judgment? The human commander hesitated, rubbing his face as if to banish the weight pressing down on him. If it were anyone else, I'd call it a Rabbis mimicry. But they never spoke like this. And this, his voice wavered. This feels like him. Zorth didn't like that answer. His gaze fixed on the abyss before them, the detonation zone. Yawning like a wound carved into creation. The Excalibur warhead had torn physics itself apart here. No ship had ever returned, yet something waited within. He exhaled sharply. We're going in. The fleet advanced cautiously, shields braced. Weapons primed, but there was nothing to fight. No wreckage. No enemy. Just hollow silence. And then something stirred. A shape, distant, half-formed, the void itself rippling around it. The closer they drew, the more it solidified, until scanners confirmed its outline. Sato's breath hitched. That's a ship. Zorth's. Eyes narrowed. Not just a ship, the Indomitable. The colossal human warship drifted in the abyss, armored hull gleaming as though untouched by time. No scars, no decay. It was as if it had been frozen at the instant of its end, but it wasn't right. Even looking at it made Zorth's scales crawl, as though his mind rejected its presence. This can't be real, Threx muttered. Zorth didn't argue. The Indomitable had been at ground zero when Grant detonated the Excalibur. It should have been erased, along with everything else. Yet here it was, waiting. The Cums hissed, and the voice returned. I told you. I'm still here, Zorth exhaled. Slowly. Prepare a boarding team. The shuttle drifted toward the Indomitable, thrusters firing in measured bursts as it cut through the unnatural stillness of the dead zone. High Captain Zorth sat strapped into his harness, claws drumming against his knee in a... Zorth exhaled, hand steady on the release. The airlock yawned open with an agonizing hiss. Beyond it, the Indomitable waited. Dark, silent. Watching. The first step inside felt wrong. Their boots clanged against the deck, but the sound came back muted, swallowed, as if the ship itself absorbed it. The lights flickered in uneven pulses, shadows crawling across the bulkheads, twisting unnaturally. The air pressed down, not physically, but in a way Zorth couldn't name. Sato led, rifle raised. Powers on. Life supports active. Then where's the crew? Zorth muttered, weapon tight in his claws. No answer. They moved slowly, sweeping every corner, empty. No blood, no struggle, no bodies. Just absence. Then, the whispering began. At first it was faint like static bleeding through Cums. But deeper inside, it swelled. Still here. Zorth froze. Did anyone else hear that? Uneasy glances. Then a human soldier muttered, yeah, we all did. Sato's jaw clenched. It's Grant, same as before. Zorth's spine stiffened. No, that's not Grant. That's something wearing his voice. The whispers fragmented, splintering into a chorus. Don't leave me. The void is endless. I see you. Then darkness. The ship's lights died in a blink. Someone's lamp clicked. On a narrow beam slicing the black, but shadows clung to the walls, recoiling, resisting the light. A deep groan shuddered through the hull. Something moved, not ahead, not behind, but within. The walls rippled, a slow contraction, like muscle flexing beneath skin. The metal itself seemed to breathe. That's not the ship, Sato hissed, his voice taut. Zorth's claws tightened around his rifle. No, it's not. Then, from the blackness, a voice cut through, clear, direct. You shouldn't have come back. Elias Grant. Zorth spun, rifle raised. The team snapped into formation, barrels sweeping the corridor. Nothing. Empty. No heat, no life, no motion. Just the faint hum of the Indomitable systems, alive in the dark. But they had all heard it. Elias Grant's voice. The air thickened, pressing down. A suffocating weight that wrapped invisible hands around their throats. Thermal scans, Zorth snapped. A Royan soldier checked his visor. Negative, nothing. Visible that didn't make sense. Zorth had fought in dozens of wars. He knew the feeling of an enemy watching from the shadows. But this wasn't something lurking. In the darkness itself felt alive. Sato gritted his teeth. "We keep moving main bridge is 3 decks up if we can access the logs. We might find out what the hell happened here." Zorth nodded, motioning for the team to advance. They moved carefully, stepping over rusted grates and past dead terminals. The Indomitable should have been a corpse of a ship, lifeless and abandoned, but its power still thrummed beneath. Their feet, it was awake, and something was awake with it. They reached the first junction. When the whispering started again, this time it wasn't a voice in Thecoms, it was all around them. "Too late, turn back." "I see you." A flicker of movement to the right. Zorth snapped his rifle towards the motion. But corridor was empty. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. He didn't imagine it. "Sato," he whispered. "Did you see?" A thud echoed through the hallway, loud directly ahead. The team froze, weapons up. Zor's pulse hammered as the Thursdaying came again, a slow, deliberate impact against the bulkhead. Then a single bloody handprint smeared across the metal, appearing as if from nowhere, and in the dim emergency lights, something stepadinto. View. The team's breath hitched. It was Elias Grant, or at least something that looked like him Zorth had seen. Elias Grant, before he had fought beside him, knew the hard-set jaw, the sharp blue eyes, the unshakable posture of a man who had led his species through its darkest hour. But this wasn't Grant. It were his face, but something was wrong too. Still too perfect, like a wax figure carved to look like a man. The Elias Grant thing stared at them, unblinking. Its uniform was pristine, untouched by battle. Not a single scar, not a hint of fatigue, just empty. Zorth muttered, "Are you seeing?" This Sotk voice was Harar. "Yeah." Zorth took a slow step forward, his claws tightened around his rifle. Grant, the thing's head tilted, a mechanical slowness, like it didn't quite understand the question. Then in that same perfect voice, "Yaushelden have come back." Zor's spines bristled. "You're not him." The thing smiled, not a human smile, too wide, too deliberate. "Aren't I?" The lights flickered and Elias Grant vanished the moment he disappeared. The entire ship shuddered. The bulkheads groaned like living metal, twisting under pressure. The whispering turned into a roar, 1,000 voices screaming at once, and then the shadows moved. Zorth barely had time to react before something lunged from the darkness. It wasn't Grant, it wasn't anything. A shape, black, formless, shifting, poured from the walls, taking shape as it moved. Not a body, but an imitation of one. It moved like a human, but it wasn't human. Its limbs stretched too long, bending at unnatural angles. Its eyes, if they were eyes, glowed with a faint, sickly green light, and it was fast. Zorth barely ducked as it lunged. The thing's arms stretched like liquid metal, razor sharp claws missing his face by inches. "Fire!" The team opened up plasma rounds, ripping through the corridor. Thieving jerked its body, distorting as if struggling to hold its shape for a brief moment. It flickered, its form glitching, shifting 1 second. It was a featureless nighter. The next it looked like one of their own soldiers, a human marine, his fist twisted in agony, his body half consumed by shifting shadows. He screamed. Zorth pulled the trigger. A plasma round burned straight through its chest. Thieving convulsed, its stolen features melting away, replaced by writhing black tendrils. Then with an unnatural shriek it collapsed into the floor, dissolving into nothingness. Silence. Zor's breath was ragged. His claws trembled around his rifle. The air smelled wrong, like burning metal and something rotting. Sato swallowed hard. What the hell waste that? Zorth forced himself to stand, forced himself to think. It had looked human for a moment. It had even sounded human, and it had worn a face just like a Elias Grant thing. Zorth exhaled, steadying his pulse. "We need to get to the bridge." Sato wiped sweat from his brow. "You think Thelogs will tell us what happened?" Zorth looked down at the blackened remains of the thing that had tried to kill them. "No," he muttered. I think they'll tell what's still happening, and that terrified him more than anything. The air inside the Indomitable was thick, heavy. Every breath felt wrong, as if they were inhaling something that wasn't meant to exist. Zorth led the team deeper into the warship plasma, rifle steady in his grip. Every hallway felt twisted, not physically, but in a way that gnawed at the mind. It was subtle, like stepping into a room and forgetting why you had come in, like walking through a dream that was becoming a nightmare. They had lost 2 more soldiers along the way. One moment they were marching in formation, the next gone. No screams, no gunfire, just erased. Sato had stopped calling their names after the second one. The remaining 6 moved cautiously, barely breathing. The ship's bridge was closed. Zorth could see the reinforced door at the end of the corridor, its metal frame warped from battle. If there were any answers left, they would be inside. The whispering had not stopped. So close, we see you. You were never meant to return. Zorth ignored it. He had no choice. They reached the bridge doors. The access panel was dead. But Sato stepped forward, pulling an emergency override from his pack. He worked quickly, his fingers moving with precision, but Zorth could tell he was rattled. They all were. The shadows had tried to wear Elias Grant's face, tried to pretend, but the real question wasn't why. The real question was, had they succeeded? Sato exhaled sharply. We're in the bridge doors groaned open, and they stepped inside. The bridge of the Indomitable was frozen in time. Every console was still active, their screens flickering with static-laced data. The captain's chair remained in place, perfectly aligned with the main viewport, which displayed the endless blackness beyond. And in the center of the bridge, slumped over the terminal, a body. The team raised their weapons instantly. It wasn't just any body, it was Elias Grant, or what was left of him. Zorth moved closer, his claws tightening guard his rifle. Grant's uniform was torn, withered with age, but that wasn't possible. The Indomitable had vanished 2 years ago. His skin was gray, cracked like ancient stone, as if his body had been half preserved, caught between death and something else. And then, in the flickering glow of the consoles, he opened his eyes. Zorth didn't think. He fired a plasma bolt, ripped straight through the captain's skull, blowing apart bone and synthetic flesh. Grant's body lurched convulsively before collapsing onto the terminal. Silence. Threx exhaled sharply. Was that wasn't him? Sat's voice was tight. It wasn't him anymore. Zorth swallowed hard. He had seen what the Erebus could do. They consumed, assimilated, wore the flesh of the fallen. This thing had not been Grant. It had been something trapped in his remains. Zorth forced himself to look away, pull the ship's logs. Now Sato nodded, moving toward the terminal. The system resisted at first, its interface lagging, glitching, but finally a single log remained intact. The last recorded message from Captain Elias Grant activated it, and Grant's real voice filled the bridge log. Entry 00277, Captain Elias Grant. Date unknown. If you're hearing this, it means someone found us. A ragged breath, static interference. I don't know how much time I have left. Time doesn't work the same way here. We shouldn't be here. None of this should exist. More interference, the sound of metal groaning in the background. When the Excalibur war had detonated, we didn't die. We didn't win. We broke something. We tore a hole in the universe. And now we're caught between what was and what comes next. A pause. I don't know if I'm still alive. I don't know if I'm already dead. Team sprinted down the corridor, weapons firing wildly into the darkness. Fegran thing didn't chase them. It watched its form warped, flickering in and out of existence like a mirage. They had never been meant to return here. The Indomitable wasn't a ship anymore. It was a wounded scar in reality, where something else had slipped through, and it wanted them to stay. Sato shouted through the Cal's sovereign wrath. Do you read? We need immediate extraction. Now. Static. No response, no connection. Tov. Fleet. Zor's pulse hammered. The ship was trying to sever them from reality. Trap them here. Keep moving, he barked. They reached the hangar bay, the shuttle still intact. Threx practically threw himself into the pilot seat, slamming the thrusters online. Get in, get in. Zorth took one last look toward the corridor. Grant was still there, standing at the threshold, watching the ship shook violently, its structure warping, the walls breathing, and for the first time Grant's smile faded. It's awaken. Oh, you let It back to them. Zor's blood turned to ice. He lunged into the shut, slamming the hatch shut. The shuttle engines roared the thrusters, igniting as they launched from the Indomitable, hurtling toward open space behind them. The ship rippled, its form collapsing inward, distorting like a mirage. And then it was gone, not destroyed, not left in ruins, just erased like it had never been there at all. Firmament, they crossed back into normal space. The Sovereign Wrath reappeared on their sensors. The comms crackled. "Hi, Captain, what happened? You vanished from all systems. 1 second you were there, and then nothing." Zorth didn't respond. Immediately he turned to Sato. The human hands were trembling, his face appalling. "You saw it too," Zorth said quietly. Sato nodded. "Grant was never there." Sato exhaled shakily. Number. He wasn't whatever they had seen, whatever had worn his voice. It had never been Elias Grant. It had been something else, something waiting, something patient. Zorth took a slow, steady breath. "Get us back to the fleet now." They had opened a door, and something had stepped through. The war was never about the Erebus. They were just the first infection. The real war, the real enemy. It had been watching the whole time, and now it knew they had seen it too.